Morning in the Scriptorium does not begin with the sun, but with the sound of a wooden cross being slowly moved and the cold that bites into the soles of your feet. You do not know the exact time. 4 clocks are useless in a place where candlelight is more trusted than the dawn. Outside, it may still be dark or just turning pale blue, but within these stone walls, the day has long begun. The scribes are already seated, hunched over, and not one of them turns as you arrive. Their fingers are already moving, dancing across the rough parchment, recording verses that have been written 1,000 times, yet must always be copied again without a single mistake, because one mistake could mean another month under the candlelight amid the biting cold, with a body far too long still. There is no sound except the scratch of goose quills on animal skin, and occasionally the slow creak of aging wooden chairs. The scent of ink, sweat, and wax merges into an aroma that never leaves your robe. You have not eaten and will not eat until your page is done. Your eyes must stay open. Your mind must stay loyal. And your hand, oh, your hand must remain as calm as the final prayer of the dying, because every letter is a test, and every page is torture done very slowly. Time inside the Scriptorium does not move like time outside. Here, time becomes heavy. It drips like wax, slowly, burning quietly, before freezing on the skin. An hour can feel like a day, and a single page can become your entire life. You do not write with freedom. You copy with obedience. Every letter must match the one before it, and even the spacing between words must follow the will of the sacred text. There is no room for personal thought. Your mind is no longer your own. It has been stripped, silenced, and replaced by a voice you must obey. You are not a writer. You are the shadow of thousands of writers before you. Your arm grows tired, and your eyes begin to blur. But mistakes are not an option. Because in the Scriptorium, a mistake is a sin recorded by the eyes of silent seniors who watch, sharp as blades. They do not scold you with words. They only stare, and that hurts more than any whip. In this world, a single drop of ink can ruin a week's work. And you know, ink can drip so easily when your body starts to tremble from hunger. But there is no mercy here, no pause to stretch your back, no hand to pat your shoulder and say you've done well enough. One more page, then another, until your hand no longer feels like a part of you, but a sacred tool that must keep writing until there is no more night, and no more you. Outside the walls of the Scriptorium, the world has color. The green of damp grass, the blue of a shy sky appearing behind morning mist, and the sound of birds perhaps singing or merely reminding that life is still moving. But inside here, the only colors are black and dull brown, ink and parchment. There are no open windows, only narrow slits high in the stone wall that let in pale light. Sometimes you wonder if the outside world still exists, or if your life is only this room, this pen, and these same letters. Often, you begin reading the sentence you've just written, but you don't understand its meaning. Not because you are stupid, but because your soul is no longer part of the writing. You are only a hand, only a tool. Your tongue is dry. your neck stiff, and every small tremble at the tip of your fingers feels like the voice of your spirit trying to flee. Sometimes the sound of dripping wax feels like a small scream. Sometimes the flicker of the torch on the wall moves like a figure you do not recognize. You know this is only the game of exhaustion. But still, in the quietest of nights, when even your own breath is too loud, you begin to believe that this scriptorium is alive. It watches you, it holds you, and it is waiting for your first mistake so it can fully claim you. Sometimes you remember your mother's face, or the sound of the morning market in the village that used to wake you with the scent of warm bread and the cries of children. But here, memory is not an escape. It is a distraction. Every time a shadow of the past appears, your letters begin to shake. You write Amen, but your thoughts drift to the pan you once washed in the river. You copy the stories of prophets, but what appears in your eyes is the sky above your old field, wide and full of birds. But in this place, nostalgia becomes an enemy. It makes your hands tremble. It makes your focus vanish. So you learn to forget, not for peace, but for survival. On this wooden bench, someone has left scratch marks on the side, a sign that you are not the only one who wanted to leave, but couldn't. No one talks about the madness behind this work, but you can feel it in the air, like a thin fog entering through the stone cracks. You sit beside those who are still sane and those who have quietly begun to fade. There is no clear line, only subtle changes in the eyes, in the way they hold their pens, in the murmurs that grow more frequent and meaningless. You begin to ask yourself, how long before you too start speaking to your own shadow? And at some point, you stop fearing the madness. You only fear stopping the writing. Because if the pen stops, this room will consume you. When the lunch bell rings far away from the monastery's kitchen, not all of us move. Some remain seated, unmoving, not lifting their heads, as if the bell was not meant for them. Sometimes because the page is not yet done. Sometimes because the body is too numb to care. When you finally stand and step out of the scriptorium, the world feels blinding. The sky seems too bright, the birds too loud, and the scent of grass too sharp. The outside world, even for a moment, feels like a strange dream you no longer recognize. In the monk's dining room, you sit in silence, holding a bowl of thin soup with barely any taste and bread harder than stone. But even such food feels like a feast after hours of ink and silence. You steal glances at your fellow scribes. Some have dark circles under their eyes, some clutch swollen hands, and others stare blankly, as if not fully returned from wherever they just were. There is little talking, only the sound of spoons against bowls, and sometimes a long cough that rattles the room. Then, like a dream cut to short, the second bell rings. And you know, the meal is over. And the day is still so long. You take a deep breath, then return. Return to the table. Return to the cold wooden chair. Return to the letters that wait to be written. And a small dread begins to settle in your thoughts, that maybe tomorrow and the day after that, nothing will be different. Maybe this is all your life ever will be. As the sun begins to sink slowly and the shadows on the walls grow longer, the damp air in the room becomes more like a mist settling in your lungs. You light a new candle, drip a bit of its warm wax onto the wooden desk, then press it down so it stands firm. And as the flame flickers calmly, small hope arises, as if the light is a reminder that the night can be endured just like before. But every light also brings shadows, and the shadows in the Scriptorium are not ordinary ones. They are long. They move slowly. Sometimes they peek from behind a pillar. Sometimes they stand still in a corner that should be empty. Perhaps it's just tricks of the light. But the longer you stay here, the more you feel they are not merely illusions. A fellow scribe once said in a weak voice that he felt watched from behind the manuscript shelves. Not long after that, he stopped coming. No one asked, no one explained. He simply vanished, like a blot of ink torn from a page. And on nights like this, when the sound of your pen scratching feels like a breath near your ear, you begin to understand what he meant. The Scriptorium is not just a workspace, it is an eraser. A place that slowly erases who you are page by page until only letters remain. You will keep writing until the world forgets who copied all of this. And when your final name fades from memory, your task will be considered complete. Night has truly arrived, and the air inside the Scriptorium begins to pierce like the tip of a needle through old cloth. Your fingers are stiff, yet you continue to write, copying prayers that have been written 1,000 times before, but still must be perfect. There is no room for error. One mistake could mean one page burned, one day wasted, one sleepless night. Around you, the other scribes are also still working in silence. No sound except the scratching of pens and held breaths. But there are moments when time seems to stop, as if everything freezes. The candles remain lit, the ink remains wet, but not a single movement is seen. Only silence, deep and terrifying. You begin to realize that such silence is not just quietness, but something older, as if time itself is bowing and waiting. And in such moments, your thoughts begin to drift. You imagine yourself elsewhere, in the rain, by a lake, or even just beneath an old tree in a small village. But all of that feels like someone else's dream, not yours. You are no longer a boy with dreams. You are a hand that copies. You are part of this book, like the ink and the scraped sheep's skin. And slowly, you begin to believe that maybe this is how it is meant to be. That not all humans are meant to be known, loved, or remembered. Some of us exist only to copy the stories of others and disappear. At last, the night ends by itself. Not because the work is finished, but because the body can no longer remain seated. The scribes begin to rise one by one, like shadows detaching from the walls. Without a word, without a good night, they walk out like spirits, returning to their graves. The candles are extinguished one by one, and the room sinks into a darkness that strangely feels like home. You too rise, letting the weariness crawl from your spine down to your feet. And when you glance back at your desk, the last page is still wet. The letters there float atop the ink like a prayer left incomplete. But that's all right, because tomorrow you will return. No matter how much your back aches, or how blurred your vision becomes, or how shattered your soul feels, you will sit in the same spot, open the ink, light the candle, and write again. Because in this world, not all wounds bleed, and not all suffering screams. Some suffering is silent, structured, carried out with hands full of devotion and a heart that slowly loses shape. And you, a scribe who will never be remembered, are part of that suffering. Yet beyond all of it, there is one thing that frightens you most. Not exhaustion, not madness, but the fear that when you finally die, everything you've written will never be read. You walk back to your sleeping cell, down a narrow corridor whose walls seem to observe your every step. The air is damp, the scent of mold and eternal dust clings to your breath. In a small space barely enough for one body and one prayer, you sit slowly on a bed of straw. No mattress, no pillow. Only stone walls and a cracked wooden ceiling. You try to close your eyes, but the ink still dances behind your eyelids. Line by line, letter by letter, as if still copying even though you've laid down your pen. Your mind is no longer your own. It has become part of the manuscript you transcribe. You want to sleep, but footsteps in the empty corridor keep your heart alert. Is it another monk unable to rest, or just the echo of your own shadow? In this monastery, the line between reality and hallucination blurs. Many have said they hear whispering at night, names spoken softly, prayers never taught, brief cries from behind the walls, but no one speaks of it during the day. Because if you acknowledge it, it becomes real. So it is better to stay silent. You hug your knees and let your body tremble slowly. Outside, the wind pushes through the old cracks of the building and makes it moan like a dying creature. You don't know what time it is, but the night feels like forever. And you know, before the dawn comes, you will remain awake, not with dreams, but with the weight that the new day will bring nothing different. Only a new page, new letters, and the same silence. And slowly, it begins to break you, not with violence, but with repetition. And when the dawn finally touches your small window with a pale light that hardly feels warm, you know it is time to return. You rise with a body yet to recover. Open the creaking door softly, and step again into the corridor where prayers and forgetfulness trade places. The Scriptorium awaits you like a dark hole that can never be filled. Wooden desk, quill pen, thick ink, and the long silence that seems to grow from the floor itself. But today, you feel something different. Not in the room, not in the manuscript, but in yourself. There is a part of you that did not return with your body. A part left somewhere, perhaps in the letters you copied yesterday, perhaps in the night that denied you dreams. And you begin to realize that this work does not just consume your time, it slowly erases your identity. It carves you into the manuscript, not as an author, not as a character, not even as a witness, only as a faint shadow behind each letter. And when someday this manuscript is opened by someone in the distant future, maybe hundreds of years from now, they will read the words you wrote with weary eyes and a nearly lifeless heart. but they will not know who you were. They will not know that every letter was the result of cold nights, forgotten hunger, and silence that could never be shared. They will simply read and move on. And that is the most painful part, that you gave your entire life to something that cannot even speak your name. Then you sit, dip your pen in ink, and begin again, because that is the task of a scribe, to write, then be forgotten.